In this week's Husker News Recap, we cover the first scrimmage of spring camp. We go over the stadium survey put out by the athletic department, and then we do a dive into the quarterback interviews from this past week. So let's get into it. Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and welcome to Cobsmacked. This is a channel dedicated to Nebraska football. We cover the Husker season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. So if you're a fan of Nebraska, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this. Getting right into the headlines, I did mention we were going to talk about the first scrimmage of spring camp. Happened this last Friday. If you haven't seen the hype video put out by the media department for Nebraska, it's on Twitter. I'm sure you can find it on Instagram, things like that. But it's under a minute long, but there's a ton of things you can pull from that. Just given, obviously it's a hype video. They're all going to be pumped up for this scrimmage, but these guys have been practicing their asses off all offseason, and so this is the first time they're actually getting to hit each other. So it was nice to see the wide receivers and the cornerbacks kind of hand fighting in the little clips that you watch through it. They're definitely being aggressive off the line and fighting for the ball when it's in the air, so both sides are doing that. So it's nice to see that from there. As far as running the ball, there was a couple running clips in there as well, and there was always more than one guy tackling the runner, which it's nice to see. The more helmets on the ball you can get, the better. And there was always more than one guy. Sometimes there was 3 or 4 guys on the ball. So I can't wait to see more little clips like this from scrimmages. The media is obviously not allowed into. It's in the enclosed arena that they have. But I hope that the coaches and things kind of give us more insight into how these are going. Obviously, now that they're in pads and they can hit people during these scrimmages, you take more away from that rather than just the walkthroughs and the practices and stuff. This is a game-like scenario, and I hope that we see more images from that. Getting into another thing, Donovan Raiola's nephew, he's the 2024 quarterback, Dylan Raiola. He was upgraded to a 5-star this past week recruit. He is 6'3", 210 pounds, and he's currently playing in Arizona, I believe. But he has offers from Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and then obviously Nebraska. Hopefully Nebraska can start winning some games and kind of pull him a little closer. We already have 5 quarterbacks on the roster, and some people kind of think that would be a deterrent for him, but we are actually tied for the lowest amount of quarterbacks on roster. Georgia has 8 and Alabama has 6. So hopefully Uncle Donnie can start pulling him closer to Nebraska if we can start seeing some success this next season, because we could certainly use a big talent like that. Getting into one of the bigger topics, the athletic department put out a stadium survey. I'm guessing like last month, but out of the 200 and some thousand surveys they sent out, they got 22,000 responses back, and these are going out to like season ticket holders, donors, students, former graduates, and other fans. But the stadium opened nearly 100 years ago, so they're trying to get a feel for like what improvements they need to make it last another 100 years. Hopefully by then we have another stadium, but they want it to be more modernized. It hasn't really been changed drastically in a long time. They've added like screens here and there, more seating, but they haven't really done any like major overhauls. So one of the bigger topics on the survey was the alcohol sales, of whether or not they're going to permit alcohol being sold in the stadium. And 72% of the people that took the survey have a positive or they're indifferent about it. So it wouldn't affect them either way. But that's an overwhelming majority, 72%. 3 out of every 4 people is saying that they wouldn't mind if alcohol was sold in the stadium. 65% said that alcohol sales wouldn't affect them coming to the games at all. It wouldn't make them want to come to more, but it wouldn't make them come to any less. While only 17% of the respondents said that they like opposed the alcohol-free seating. So a lot of guys were willing to compromise, saying that if you don't want to be around the alcohol, that's not your thing. There can be a section, just for people that don't want to deal with the alcohol, and very minor, like they had very little pushback on that. So if that's the way it's going to go, I can obviously see that being a solution, a compromise for some people that don't want to be around that. Maybe they're bringing their kids, they don't want their kids around that, but most people want it, and most people aren't against like separating the alcohol section versus the non-alcohol sections. 22% said that they would be willing to attend more games if alcohol was available. I believe only like 10% said that they would not come to more games if there was alcohol around. So obviously you're playing the majority favorite there, but personally, it wouldn't affect my attendance at all. I don't really get to make it to a ton of games anyway, being in Columbus and having to work during the Saturdays usually. But I wouldn't be opposed to it anyway. People are drinking at the tailgates anyway, and people are usually sneaking stuff in as well. So it wouldn't affect me at all. It'd probably be helping, pump money into the program. So I'm not opposed to it at all. People are worried that it would cause disruptions and like more confrontations and fights in the stadium. I don't see that being the case. Tom Osborne's son kind of made this argument too. He said that there is people that sneak it in, but we have a tradition to uphold. We have, kids that go to the stadium, and this would just cause more like civil issues. And I just don't think that that's true. If you look at the tailgates, so there's a ton of alcohol out in the parking lot during these tailgatings, and all these guys are hammered. And at halftime, when students leave or whatever, a lot of times they'll go out and get drinks and then go back into the stadium. And hasn't been any problems with that. And I actually think that if you were willing to like let them drink, throughout the game rather than trying to chug before the game and then chug at halftime, I think that people are going to be more, even keeled about it. But even in the tailgating region where people are drinking the entire game, you don't really have a ton of fights. You don't hear about like negative things coming out of the thing. For the most part, people are pretty civil in the parking lot. So I don't think that's a huge concern that should be taken too heavily. On this survey as well, another huge thing was the seating is a big concern. So this might be actually the biggest concern, even more than the alcohol sales, because this was the highest like percentage thing that people said deterred them from going to games. Between the equal seatings and the comfortability, we'll address both those. So as far as equal seatings go, 72% of people said they wouldn't be opposed to more equal policies as far as buying tickets at the same price. Right now, there's kind of people that get grandfathered tickets, and so they're paying a lot less than people that would go out and buy it off of like Ticketmaster or whatever. But a lot of people are under the assumption like that we should change to a policy in which everybody, like me and the guy next to me, are going to be paying the same amount for that seat. And again, that makes total sense. It's common sense there. But more importantly, the comfortability of those seats was way more important. So it was tied for the highest reason, as I mentioned, for not attending more games. It was 42% of people said that they don't go to more games because of the comfortability of the seats. That's 3 times the average from Power 5 schools. So obviously, that's a huge thing. It was tied for cost to attend, also being at 42%. So the cost is something that we'll talk about how we might be able to lower that a little bit through alcohol sales and things like that. But the comfortability is something that they need to address as far as upgrading the seats themselves and then maybe upgrading the packages as well. So it was by far the element in the stadium that people felt like could be enhanced, at 77% of people saying that they needed to make some kind of change to the seatings. They were testing out some new seating concepts. I'll throw some pictures on the screen. But along with the individual seats being wider, they felt like they needed to make them wider because people are obviously bigger than they were when these seats were installed in like the 30s, or the seating arrangements were installed in the 30s. People are taller, they're bigger now, just in general. So they also talked about ledge seats, lodge boxes, and different type of suites that were going to come in. So those suites were like ledge, lodge, and field, and they tested those. I like the images that they're showing. I think that they're pulling these concepts from different stadiums. I believe Iowa has some kind of like booth type seating around the like game field. And along with also kind of pushing an idea that maybe we have a Huskers restaurant in a renovated portion of the Memorial Stadium that's open even on non-game days, and they can like run events and stuff at this restaurant. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. I think that'd be cool to be able to eat in Memorial Stadium, just on any given Tuesday or whatever. But also for like the charity events and stuff, I think it'd be cool to have it in the stadium itself in a nice, restaurant. Even if it's like not in the stadium, but close enough to the stadium, I feel like that'd be a pretty cool thing. Another smaller issue that was addressed was legalizing sports gambling within the stadium itself. I know that Nebraska as a whole is kind of moving this direction. I believe by October they're supposed to have legalized sports gambling in the state. So now people are trying to say, like, why don't we have this in the stadium then? So like when you go to the horse races, you can gamble right there. So there's money pumping in the whole time you're watching. And why not do that at the stadium as well? 60% of people said they wouldn't be opposed to having gambling in the stadium. Obviously, that's not as major of a deal as the alcohol was. But personally, I think that I wouldn't be opposed to it. Like it wouldn't bother me either way. I don't typically bet on games. Like if there was a game where the odds were completely crazy and I thought we had a better chance, then maybe that'd be more intriguing. But I'm not some guy that goes out and bets on, games every Saturday or whatever. But I don't. The only upside to this I can really see, there's people that are being really negative about it. Like, we don't want gambling, period. Gambling is going to happen. So now it's just a matter of if you're going to have it in the stadium. So I think that between the alcohol sales and the gambling, that should be able to drive the ticket prices down pretty significantly, which would affect the cost to attend issue that people are having. And then if they can also pump that money into better seatings and better seating, scenarios like the suites and things like that, I think that it's going to be a win-win either way. It's going to be a money issue if they decide to go that route. But again, we need to think of the long-term effects of it. If it's going to be a thing, I think alcohol obviously is probably going to be in, given the overwhelming, addressment of people saying that they want it in. Gambling could go either way. It doesn't really affect me, but I think either way, the money coming in from those things would help to drive the ticket prices down, help to see upgrades come to the stadium. Like they wanted more local restaurants to be available for food service during the games. That's one way to do it. So what do you guys think of the potential upgrades to the stadium? Let me know in the comments below. I personally, again, I don't disagree, with the alcohol or the gambling. I do agree that the seating comfort needs to be kind of kicked up. It hasn't been addressed in a very long time. And I mean, people are leaving halfway through the game, especially if we're losing. If we're winning, they're standing up and cheering for the team. So it doesn't really matter. But as I mentioned, it could drive ticket prices down. And so it should help all the way around. So now we're going to jump right into the spring interviews. There were some more interviews this week, mostly the quarterbacks. So Scott Frost was the first one that I watched, and he said the coaches all around are kind of pushing all of the guys. Not that they haven't in the past, but these coaches are like having a really high standard, and maybe that's because there's such like a high bar for next season that we have to see success. This isn't a growth year. This is a results year. And so he's setting the bar really high. These coaches are setting the bar really high, but they're helping the players to achieve it as well. So he said even just through the first 4 practices of the season, they were already seeing the improved offensive line, firing off the ball, which is something he's really been missing. Some people were taking like offense to this, saying that he was throwing the old coaching staff under the bus here. I don't think that was the case. I think he was just saying like this is something that he's been wanting to see. And now he's seeing it. So it's not a matter of a coach being bad in the past or whatever. It's just maybe a difference in technique or difference in teaching that technique. But the protection is better as well. Not just firing off the ball during the running downs. Protecting the quarterback on his passing plays is also better. He credits Raiola with the mentality shift and the technique improvements. That little snippet there kind of took me back to the Husker history dive we've been doing, going over the coaching eras throughout Husker history. When we talk about Bob Devaney coming in, he came in with a team that had 5 losing seasons straight at that time. And Bill Jennings' team, he had talent on the team, but he just wasn't able to get anything out of them. And Bob Devaney came in and he had a mentality shift. He said, it's way more important for you to believe that you can do it rather than you having the skill set to do it. If you believe you can do it, your skill set will follow. So he took a team, and there was no growth year for Bob Devaney. He literally had the guys to do it, and he gave them that mental shift. And I think that Raiola is kind of on that same track there. He has the guys to do it. We have talented guys on that line, and we have the size to do it. It was just a mentality thing. They didn't know how to be thinking about things, and they didn't know to have the confidence in their skill set. Raiola seems to be pushing that pretty hard, and so he's pushing that mentality and the techniques to result in these improvements already. They also Scott Frost mentioned Casey Thompson. He said that he's quicker and more mobile than he thought. He said he knew his dad was fast from playing on the Sooners, but he didn't realize that Casey Thompson was as quick as he was, and so that was kind of a nice surprise to see. Maybe they'll utilize that a little bit more going forward. Now we flip over to Mark Whipple. So there's lots of new things being thrown at the guys as far as he was talking about. He said there's a lot of play concepts and professional concepts because he does push more of a professional, like NFL style offense. But he said it was a challenge for him as well. He is used to having established guys, be there for 2 or 3 years. With Kenny Pickett, he was there for 3 years. He's used to having guys that are already ingrained in his system, and now he's coming into not only a bunch of new guys that don't know Scott Frost's system, but a bunch of new guys, period. So they're coming into a completely new conceptual scheme, and he does say that he has some slips with his old terminology because, as I mentioned in the previous week, he was trying to change his terminology rather than having the players relearn what they already know as like a position group. So the XYZ receivers, they already know that XYZ setup. So he's been switching out what he's been saying as opposed to what they have been saying. And he still slips with that. And he said the guys still laugh at me because I'll call a position, something else, and they'll laugh at me because that's not what they call it anymore. But he said that there's a challenge, obviously, for the guys to take in all this information, but it's a challenge for him as well to remember that these guys are new to this system, and so he's trying to be able to work with everybody evenly. He did mention that the passing game, as far as he's concerned, is all about footwork. He is running through the 2.5, 3-step dropbacks, all the way up to the 5-step dropbacks from center. And he did mention that they were kind of working under center more than the quarterbacks were used to in the past. And if you look back at Nebraska, we were working out of the shotgun almost entirely the past couple seasons, and I think a lot of that was issues with the offensive line not trusting their protection. You don't want to be under center if a guy's going to fly right through that line and hit you before you can even get the ball to the running back. But he said being under center for the quarterbacks gives the running backs more lane options to choose from, because if they're all the way set back, he's going to take more time to get to the holes anyway, but it also kind of cuts off those inner pockets on each side of the center. And so he said being under center for the quarterback really allows the running back to have more options and more vision in the lanes he's trying to run through. He did also mention that being under center for these quarterbacks is going to help prepare them for the NFL better as well. He mentioned Casey Thompson as well, so he said he likes what he sees from him. Obviously, that experience shows he's curious, he's a leader, he's always in the film room looking and learning things. He's more mobile than he thought, but he's still got some things to work with as far as scrambling goes, as far as getting rid of the ball instead of taking a sack goes. But he's already good at that. There's just little tweaks that we can work with him there. He said that all the positions are progressing nicely across the offense, being sure to watch film and ask questions. He said that we're not to the point yet where guys know they made a mistake, and so then they want to correct it. Right now, the guys don't even know they're making mistakes. But he said that they're turning there. They are starting to ask questions, and they are starting to catch little mistakes here and there. So he said we're going to be there before. We got a lot of time. He wasn't really concerned with the time crunch. He did mention that they are passing it a lot more than maybe he will during the season. But that's only because, again, these are new concepts, and he's trying to get as much reps with those new concepts as he can. He did say that the best players as well, they want to be coached, and Casey Thompson being the main example there, is he said that when he does go through a rep or he does do a bad thing or he is watching film, he's asking good questions. And even some of the guys, you might consider them stupid questions, but they didn't know how to run from out of center, or they didn't know certain coverages, and what am I supposed to be seeing when I'm going through my progressions? There's no stupid questions. If you're willing to be coached and you're willing to throw your ego down and learn new things, then he's very happy to have you. So next up, we did finally get to hear from Casey Thompson. So this was a formal interview. We did have the one with Sean Callahan on Husker Online, but we got to actually see Casey Thompson in some Husker pads, and so that's nice that we don't have to use Texas clips anymore. But he said that right off the bat, he said that learning the leadership was going to be important for him. He knew that coming in, but he was kind of eased into it when he got here. So he was eased in, kind of sitting back, watching how the guys were, how their personalities set up and things like that, getting to know the guys first before he tried to lead them. You don't want a stranger to tell you what to do or to try to lead you into battle. You want to know the guy first. So that's what he was working on the first few weeks. But he did say that the film sessions and running routes with receivers really helped him bond with the receiver side. He obviously tried to bond with the offensive line by taking them out to that steakhouse. He wasn't willing to say how much that cost him. He kind of just laughed at that question. He's like, yeah, I'm not willing to say that, but I'm sure it was a big hit. But he did mention, too, that the NIL deals for Nebraska's hands down, he said, one of the best NIL opportunities in the country because of the fan support here. He said the fan support blew him away once he came here. He knew it was good, but he said when you get here, you finally, you feel it. It's immediate. He can't compare it to anywhere else. And he was at Texas. Texas is a huge, university. They have a huge fan base, but numbers don't necessarily mean support. So he said the support here is outstanding. He gets recognized everywhere he goes. He said the only place that he hasn't been kind of stopped and talked to was when he went to the gas station. So he says he's enjoyed it so far. It hasn't gotten to the point yet where it's annoying him. He has to cover up and stuff. He actually kind of goes out there. He's I know I'm going to be recognized, so I kind of dress up. I watch who I'm with. I watch what I'm saying. And he's very professional in that regard. He didn't know that I would come with the job, so it didn't surprise him. But they kind of talked through his decision to come to Nebraska as well. They've kind of talked about this transfer portal, both with him and with other guys as well. But he said that Frost had first recruited him to UCF, and so he kind of already had that baseline relationship with him there. He studied Whipple and Pickett at Pitt, and so he kind of understood Whipple's concepts there, and he's seen how Nebraska's wide receivers, regardless of our record, you have Stanley Morgan Jr., you have J.D. Spielman, you have, Wandale Robinson, you have all these high talent receivers, and they can do things with the ball, and he feels like he's going to be able to push those receivers and help those receivers succeed as well. So it's not like we've brought in good quarterbacks and haven't had anybody to throw to. We've had good wide receivers. We just haven't been able to have the success that we would have liked to see. And he did say that it doesn't hurt that his dad knew Mickey Joseph in college. So Spring practice is going way better than he expected to as well. He said that he's absorbing the playbook quickly because all of the concepts that Mark Whipple's throwing at him, all these pro style concepts he's throwing at him, he's used them before, he's seen them before. It's just the terminology is just a little different, and just the little details like the routes that are run on specific plays and things. But the concepts overall are not new to him, so he's like, I'm absorbing it very quickly. They were talking about his film room. They were saying how he's not only watching his own film to see what he's doing wrong or looking at the coverage that Nebraska is throwing at him. He's watching a ton of Big Ten schools and seeing how the different Big Ten defenses are setting up and how he's going to be able to overcome that. He is already noting the differences between the Big 12 defenses and the Big 10 defenses. Obviously, this one's a little more like hard-nosed, I guess. I don't know how else to explain that. Big 12 defenses seem to be quicker, more concerned with the pass, whereas Big 10 seems to be very in-your-face, brutal, physical defense. So overall, I liked him talking. He was very charismatic, very calm. He seemed well thought out throughout the whole thing. And not only that, just the research that he put into Nebraska before he even made the commitment to come here. I think that plays through his whole life. I think he does a ton of research. He's very smart. He's not going to make a split-second decision without having some prior back knowledge to it. So I think all these games he's going to be going into, assumingly he's going to be the starter, but all these games he's not going to just kind of wing it when he gets in there. He's going to know the team before he gets on the field. And so I feel like his confidence and his charisma really shows through in his calmness. I feel like some guys kind of get flustered when they're up there, but he was calm because he's confident in who he is as a quarterback. Looking at another quarterback, we had Chuba Purdy. There was a lot of portal questions on here, like, what made you decide to come to Nebraska? And he's addressed all these before, so I didn't find this interview so interesting. Obviously he made the decision to come here. Again, Mark Whipple had tried to bring him to Pitt, so he had the relationship there. So when Mark Whipple came here and he jumped in the portal, he said Whipple was one of the first guys to reach out with me, and I already had that relationship with him, and he really liked, Whipple's system, and he liked what was going on here. So he did mention how his brother's time at Iowa State really helped him as far as like learning different styles and having that competitive edge to compete with your own brother. Like he was around Iowa State too, so he wasn't like, he's like, the weather's not really going to affect me. We've been in Iowa a ton the past 4 years because his brother played there. And so he said that he's kind of set up because his brother was in that position. He's kind of set up to hold this competition a little more closely to the chest and take it, right on the chin. So he did talk about a nagging injury that's been bothering him this spring, so he's hoping that it can clear up and he can heal. He's not trying to rush back in, but he is eager to join the fray. So he's hoping that it's not going to be too long before he can jump back in and be competitive, especially he mentioned that at the end of spring break, it should be, healed up and he should be able to join the fray. But he did specify that it was not his collarbone. A lot of guys, I think the interview asked him, is it your collarbone? Because he has had issues with that at Florida State. He's had 4 surgeries on it. So he did say that it wasn't that issue. It was just a minor thing that he was trying to get over. Heinrich Harburg. So I believe this is the first time we've really seen him as well in an interview setting. I keep saying interview. It's more like a press conference. So he talked about the different quarterbacks and how their different leadership styles are something he's noticing. He said, like, Casey Thompson's obviously vocal, Chuba Purdy's vocal. Logan Smothers isn't so much vocal as he is mature, and so he's bringing a lot of the experience from being here for a couple years now. He's bringing that experience to it. He is still, he can still get on you, but it's more from a mature standpoint rather than a energy standpoint. And he said he's not necessarily vocal himself, but he leads by example. He feels like hitting the weight room, being there on time, watching film, being there, doing your best is going to be the best leadership that he can offer. He's going to feel like leading by example. You really can't beat that because it's showing the guys what you're expecting from them by doing it yourself. He talked about how the tradition from high school to college is more than just football. Because he's from Nebraska, he's from Kearney. He said that the transition there is a lot different than he thought it was going to be, and is a lot harder than he thought it was going to be. He said you're not just leaving home to go play football. You're leaving home to learn how to live on your own, to play football almost full time, and also go to school as a college student, taking on a ton of responsibility there. And so he said that was kind of a big shift for him to learn a lot more self-responsibility than he was used to. You're now like having to clean your house instead of your room, and you're having to take all these college courses on top of working all the time on football. So he said it was a little harder than he was used to, but now in his second year, now he's kind of getting in the rhythm of things. Now, Logan Smothers' interview was very interesting. Very matter-of-factly, he came out and they asked him, did you ever once consider leaving Nebraska? And he said he never considered leaving Nebraska. And he came here from Alabama to play football. They asked him even after Nebraska added 2 quarterbacks in January with Casey Thompson and Chuba Purdy. And he said, yes, sir, competition, I love it. Just like there was no thought there. He just was super confident in his reason for being here, and it was his own reason. They asked him, is this something you had to talk about with your family? And he said no. He's like, this is my decision. I came here to play football. So this loyalty and the confidence almost in that decision, like there was no decision as far as he was concerned, but the loyalty there, despite this current like transfer culture that Eric Chenander was kind of talking about, the transfer portal is always open to everybody. If you know you're not going to get the starting job, or if you've worked your way up, but now new guys come in, there's always an opportunity for you to leave. But despite that, he's staying loyal to his decision to come to Nebraska. And somebody threw out the thing that he had committed to Nebraska before Scott Frost coached his first game here. And he's staying loyal to that. And that's refreshing. I haven't seen that a ton in this current modern football era. And it seems to speak more to his confidence, not only in his own skill set to win that starting job, but his confidence in his decision to come here, period. So, again, it's refreshing to hear that his loyalty is not something you see every day. I think one of the guys even said, that's pretty rare. And he was just like, yeah, that's me. So, in the way he was speaking, in the body language as well, I felt more confidence from him. And I don't know if that's from having the experience from last year, just that one game that he started, but having the experience from a couple of games of getting playtime. But something feels different with him as well. He doesn't seem so timid, and he doesn't seem like he's sitting back and waiting for the job to open up. He feels like now is the opportunity, and I'm pulling a lot from him from what the few words he said, but he did say that the offense felt slightly different. He said it feels quicker, it feels more fluid. There's more footwork than when he was working with Verduzco. So with Verduzco, he really worked on my mechanics, and so he got that down through Verduzco. But now there's more footwork involved, working under center, as I mentioned with Whipple's interview. But he did mention like being under center is kind of a newer concept to him, and doing that 5-step drop back is a little more different. So working on that footwork is very important to him, but he's going to get it down. He didn't seem concerned with learning that, but he seemed to like the quickness and the fluidity of the offense now. And I think that's going to suit him being, kind of that. The way he was running the option last season had to be fluid. You had to be quick on your feet. You had to make split-second decisions as far as pitching it or keeping it yourself. And I don't think he's going to have a problem with the offense now. Especially, I think that the pass might be still more suited to Casey Thompson. But again, if it is more fluid and there is more options to run with, I think that Logan Smothers, just based on his confidence, that really like kicks the competition back up for me. I kind of almost threw, if I had to give it like a percentage, I feel like Casey Thompson had the job like 75% lockdown, barring any injuries. Now with Logan Smothers, as confident as he is, it's like a 60-40 now. That's still highly favoring Casey Thompson to start just because of his experience, but Logan Smothers is not going to make that an easy win for him. But once again, these spring interviews really like have me pumped for the spring game, but then also it's going to be torture waiting the summer for the fall season to start. Every time I watch guys talk, I just get really pumped about the season, and that's why I do this a YouTube channel. Because I'm excited for the team and I'm excited for the direction that the program is going. The guys are going to be on spring break this next week, so we won't see them for another week, obviously. But we will resume spring camp next week, and then they will have that scrimmage on Saturday, I believe, and then the next week after that, they will have another scrimmage on Friday. So we have 2 scrimmages until the spring game. So hopefully we get a lot more clips or a lot more talk from the coaches about what they're seeing from their perspective in these scrimmages. Chenander said that there's a big difference between doing the walkthrough and watching these guys actually hit each other. And so I'm hoping we can get more insight into that. But are you guys liking what you have heard from the quarterbacks? Again, going back to the survey, do you guys have any opinions on the alcohol or the gambling or the seating arrangements? I like the pictures. If you didn't get a chance, I'll post a link down below to the stadium survey itself. You can see the concept images again. I like some of them. There was a field side suite I really liked, and the bench seating as well. I feel like that's going to be nice, and especially if they can start like having more food options at the stadium. I just feel like they're going to up the experience overall, and I can't wait to go to another game. But I'm excited to hear more out of these full-time spring scrimmages as well. So until next time, go Big Red.